Why would the most powerful religious leader on earth be buried in 3 coffins, layer after layer, sealed in silence? It's one of the most mysterious and symbolic rituals in the Catholic Church, witnessed by millions yet understood by few. In this video, we'll uncover the hidden meaning behind the triple papal burial, explore how this tradition was shaped by history and faith, and reveal why Pope Francis broke with centuries of custom. Whether you're drawn by the mystery, the symbolism, or the future of tradition itself, what you're about to hear is more than a ritual. It's a story of power, humility, and eternity. Chapter 1. The Triple Burial, a mystery in plain sight. Imagine a plain wooden coffin resting at the center of St. Peter's Square. The world watches in silence. Cameras from every continent zoom in on its simplicity while millions of Catholics mourn. Yet, what few realize is that this casket, humble and unadorned, is just the beginning. Beneath the solemn ritual of a papal funeral lies one of the Church's most mysterious and symbolic customs: the burial of the Pope in not one but 3 coffins. This ancient practice isn't about luxury or excess. It's a tradition layered with spiritual meaning, historical intrigue, and theological depth. The triple coffin burial has been used for centuries, hidden in plain sight, and yet few ever ask what it truly means. Why 3? What is preserved? What is protected? And what is proclaimed through these layers of wood and metal? This is not just about honoring the dead. It's about preaching to the living. The first coffin, made of cypress, reflects humility. The second, of letter zinc, ensures preservation. The third, crafted from noble wood, like oak or elm, presents dignity to the world. But these aren't just materials. They're metaphors. The ritual tells a story not of power, but of transformation. From flesh to memory. From temporal authority to eternal legacy. It's a sermon without words, delivered through ritual. Few viewers notice the moment when the inner casket disappears from view. Fewer still realize that a second, heavier coffin is sealed around it in silence. And then a third, solemn and strong, is lowered into the earth, or into the crypt beneath St. Peter's Basilica. The ceremony flows with quiet precision, concealing centuries of history and layers of symbolic intent beneath its polished surface. In this video, we'll peel back each of those layers, spiritual, historical, and human. You'll discover where the tradition came from, what each element means, how it changed with Pope Francis, and what that says about the future of the Catholic Church. And along the way, we'll uncover stories that are rarely told. Facts hidden, not by secrecy, but by ceremony. Before we go deeper, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more stories that explore faith, mystery, and the hidden rituals of the Church. Your support helps this channel continue to bring rich, meaningful Catholic content to people around the world. Chapter 2. Layers of Meaning, the Symbolism of the 3 Coffins. Each layer of the papal burial isn't just a container, it's a message. The Church, steeped in centuries of tradition, doesn't do anything without meaning. The triple coffin isn't about extravagance, it's a teaching tool. A final, silent homily from a man who spent his life preaching with words. In death, the message becomes even clearer. All things pass, but some truths endure. The innermost coffin, crafted from cypress, is perhaps the most powerful. This wood has been used for burials since ancient times, not because it's beautiful, but because it resists decay. Its simplicity reflects the gospel truth that greatness is born in humility. No velvet, no gold, just a reminder. This man, though once the most visible spiritual leader in the world, returns to God as every man does, naked of status, clothed only in mercy. Sealed within are sacred items: a white veil over the face, a bag of coins minted during his papacy, and a parchment known as the rogito, a brief handwritten summary of the Pope's life, virtues, and key actions. These aren't relics, they're records. A spiritual resume placed at the threshold of eternity. The message is subtle but unmistakable. His words are finished. Now his deeds must speak. The second coffin, made of lead or zinc, brings weight, literally and figuratively. It protects the body from decay and disturbance, ensuring that the earthly remains of the Pope are preserved through the centuries. Lead isn't chosen for beauty, it's chosen for permanence. It sends a message to future generations. This memory matters. This life was meant to endure. Then comes the outer coffin, often crafted from oak or another noble wood. This is the one the public sees. It represents the dignity of the papal office, the authority once held, and the reverence the world owes to a shepherd of souls. Yet, even in its craftsmanship, it remains plain. No ornate carvings, no golden hinges. Even in death, the Pope's life remains centered on service, not spectacle. Together, these three coffins form a kind of spiritual architecture, a visible catechism about life, death, and what lies beyond. And it's this hidden theology, this layered message that makes the ritual more than just tradition. It becomes a testimony. Chapter 3: Origins in the Shadows. How the tradition began. Long before the cameras, before the marble tombs, before the Vatican was even built, there were tomb robbers. In medieval Europe, graves of kings, nobles, and religious leaders were frequent targets. Bodies were stolen for ransom or for relics, believed to hold miraculous power. Even popes weren't spared. Their remains, often interred with sacred objects, were vulnerable to desecration. So the Church responded, not just with guards, but with ritual. By the 1300s, the practice of using multiple coffins began appearing among the elite, particularly within the church hierarchy. What began as a pragmatic solution soon evolved into something more. For popes whose lives were wrapped in layers of spiritual meaning, the idea of layered coffins became a natural extension of their role, even in death. It was no longer just about protection. It was about proclamation. The Church, deeply attuned to symbolism, infused each element with theological weight. The inner coffin spoke of humility, the middle of memory, and the outer of authority. In a time when literacy was rare and the average person encountered faith through sight and ritual rather than text, these layers became silent sermons. A triple coffin wasn't just security, it was liturgy. Not every pope received this treatment at first. The tradition solidified gradually, shaped by era, politics, and papal personality. During the Renaissance, when grandeur flourished and cathedrals soared into the sky, the triple coffin became more than tradition. It became expectation. Yet even then, it retained its message. The man buried here may have been powerful, but he was still a servant of Christ. Few people know that some of the oldest papal tombs in the catacombs of Rome, dating back to the 3rd century, bore inscriptions not of triumph, but of peace. In pace, they read. In peace. As the burial customs became more elaborate, that peace remained the goal. Every layer, every seal, every step of the ritual pointed not to earthly legacy, but to eternal rest. And so the Church carried this ritual across the centuries, not out of habit, but out of meaning. Because every generation needs reminders. And every burial, especially one watched by millions, becomes a chance to teach something that no sermon ever could. That behind the tiara and the throne lies a soul seeking mercy, just like the rest of us. Chapter 4: The Quiet Revolution of Pope Francis. When Pope Francis made the decision to change how a pope would be buried, it wasn't announced with fanfare. There was no grand declaration, no sweeping liturgical reform with Latin titles. Just a quiet shift, one that echoed everything he stood for. The man who refused to live in the apostolic palace and drove a modest car wasn't going to be buried in 3 coffins. Not out of rebellion, but out of conviction. In 2024, just months before his death, Pope Francis quietly authorized a revision to the Ordo Exequiarum Romani Pontifices, the official guide for papal funerals. It was the first time in centuries the text had been updated not to add more but to subtract. The language was simple, almost hidden in footnotes. The Pope may choose a simplified burial, and Francis had already made his choice. He requested a single coffin, wooden, modest, with a discreet internal lining of zinc. No outer oak, no middle lead, no fanfare. The symbolism remained, but it was concentrated. The humility of cypress, the preservation of metal, and the dignity of craftsmanship, all present but no longer divided. The ritual had been compressed into a single act, and that compression made the message louder, not softer. Even more surprising was his burial place. Instead of the crypt beneath St. Peter's Basilica where most modern popes rest, Francis chose to be buried at the Basilica of St. Mary Major, a place he visited countless times, especially after apostolic journeys. A church not of emperors and councils, but of prayers and pilgrims. It was deeply Marian, deeply Francis. For many, this was a moment of tension. Would this become the new norm? Was this humility or a disruption of sacred continuity? Yet for others, it was the most honest gesture of a man who would spend his entire pontificate calling the church to strip away excess, to return to the essentials, to imitate the poverty of Christ. In death, he preached one final time, with wood, silence, and simplicity. And perhaps that's why his funeral touched so many, even beyond Catholic circles. It didn't need grandeur to be moving. It didn't need 3 coffins to feel eternal. It needed only one man, laid to rest in faith, surrounded by prayer. A quiet revolution that spoke more loudly than gold or marble ever could. Chapter 5. Legacy or Disruption. The future of the triple coffin. Pope. Francis's final gesture was powerful, humble, authentic, deeply personal. But after the tears dried and the incense faded, an uneasy question began to rise within many corners of the church. Should this become the new standard? Was Francis's simplified burial a personal testimony, or a silent challenge to a tradition that had preached its own theology for centuries? Tradition, especially in Catholicism, isn't just about ritual, it's about memory. It connects us to the early martyrs, to medieval mystics, to saints who lived and died wrapped in symbols that outlived empires. The triple coffin ritual wasn't just custom, it was catechesis in motion. A visual sermon passed from pope to pope, reminding us that humility, death, and glory are not enemies, but companions on the journey home. There's beauty in simplicity, but there's also beauty in the continuity of tradition, especially one that has endured plagues, wars, schisms, and reformations. Is it possible that by simplifying the ritual, we risk losing something that transcends the individual? Something that speaks not just of the man who died, but of the mystery he served. Will future popes follow Francis's path? Or will they return to the triple coffin as a sign of unity with their predecessors? That remains to be seen. What this channel believes, firmly and with love, is that the Church thrives when she remembers. We support a return to the beauty of tradition, not out of nostalgia, but out of reverence. And yet, we also honor Pope Francis. His life was a witness to the gospel, and his burial, though different, reflected the virtues he embodied: compassion, humility, and authenticity. Perhaps the solution isn't to choose between tradition and simplicity, but to understand what each moment calls for. Every pope carries his own legacy, shaped by the era he leads. But when we honor the past, we anchor ourselves, and sometimes looking back can help us see further ahead. That's why we've put together the ebook 50 Saints, Stories and Prayers for Divine Intervention. Inside, you'll find lives marked by holiness, courage, and prayer. Many of them rooted in traditions the Church has preserved for centuries. It's more than inspiration. It's a treasury of memory. You can find the link to our store below. The burial of a pope is not just the closing of a chapter. It is a message to the world. Whether wrapped in 3 coffins or laid to rest in one, it speaks of mortality, mission, and mystery. Through tradition, the Church teaches. Through change, she reflects. And through each papal funeral, we're reminded that every leader, no matter how great, returns to God as a servant. What truly endures is not the ritual, but the witness, the love for the Church, the faith in Christ, the hope in resurrection. As the Church journeys forward, these moments call us to remember not only the lives of the popes, but the richness of our tradition and the depth of our faith. If this video moved you, consider sharing it with someone who values the beauty of Catholic history and the dignity of its rituals. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel for more stories that explore the mysteries, saints, and sacred heritage of our faith. Because in a world that often forgets, remembering is an act of reverence.